for joining us for our second live. And this is through the Connections free membership. So as everyone comes in, we're just going to wait one moment for Dr. Ray and Jean. But first, let's light a candle because the topic of today is meditation. We already know that Dr. Ray and Jean have been studying, practicing meditation. They both went on their own 10-day silent meditation retreats at different times, maybe even a decade apart. So they bring a lot of wisdom to meditation. And of course, one of them will guide us in the meditation tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature or also just add them in the comments. But what I'll be doing at this moment is just launching a poll to get a better idea of what your goals for meditation might be. And as we wait, I'll just let you know, I'm Angela. I'm one of the coaches with Couple Synergy, and I'm so happy to be part of this. I've been working with Dr. Ray and Jean for a while. I've been lucky enough to learn some of what they know about meditation and the bigger picture, like transformations, which is one of their 40-day practices, where it's a way to connect with the physical body, emotionally, and sort of work on spirituality as well. And we know there's many different ways that, people can become more spiritual and more in tune with their own self. Meditation is just one tool that can be helpful with that. So if you have any questions, like I said, use Q&A or go ahead and type it in the comments and we'll be sure to answer it because that's what we're here for. It's a way to connect with the community and it's a way to answer your questions and a way for you to get to know Dr. Ray and Jean a little bit more. Now, if you were able to access this, that means you have access to all of the written articles and past webinars and past just recorded videos about a variety of topics. And that you can find if you just use the link to access Connections membership. Right now, it has a feature where you can go through each lesson, read, watch, and then you might complete all the lessons, but it will take time. Hi, Dr. Ray and Jean.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear us pretty good?
Yes.
Let me just make sure all our settings are good. Okay, good.
We just we went fishing. We're down in Texas, and then there's a restaurant that cooks your fish up for you. So we had fresh fish for dinner, which is good.
Yeah, we pulled out, you see the pictures, Ange?
Yes,
They're
I
like
did.
huge red drum. They're native to like southeast, southeast area in the Gulf. So these fish were, they were fighters, but they gave us some yummy dinner. So who do we have on the call today, Ange?
We have a couple people on the call right now,
Awesome.
But if you just did a live, then, I'm sure more people will be popping on.
Cool. Yeah, we didn't actually do it live, but we're just going to go
in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dr. Ray and Jean with Couple Synergy. And today is for our weekly webinar. We're actually going to be talking about the science of meditation.
Yep. The number one thing that we hear is, I can't meditate. I'm not good at meditating, all sorts of things like that. And I think the main reason is because everyone has this preconceived idea that meditation is lovely and relaxing.
It actually is not.
It can be.
Yeah. I mean, there are times that you're going to feel relaxed doing it, but for the most part, meditation is kind of excruciating.
Well, it's work, just like working out your body. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And the relaxation piece is actually a byproduct. It's not the goal. The goal is not to clear your mind because your mind doesn't stop, right? So people think if they're not relaxed or their mind is wandering, that means they're not meditating. Actually, there's only one goal of meditation. And that goal, well, let's do it like this first. Close your eyes. Focus on your breath. Don't change or control your breath. Just notice if it's short or if it's long. And now open your eyes. You just meditated, because the number one goal of meditation is to become an observer of yourself. There is no such thing as a passive observer. So that which is being observed will change because you're observing it. And that's the point of meditation. So the point of meditation is to, we are domesticated to look out here for answers. They're not out there, they're inside. We are domesticated to cut off what we feel. And when we shut down our feelings in our heart, we're left with three emotions that are pretty much all we really experience. And that is anger, anxiety, and fear.
Anytime we delve into the subconscious mind, the emotional brain, all of those emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones, insecurity, is going to float to the surface, right? We're stirring the pot. And so all of that's going to come up. That's why a lot of people are very afraid of doing meditation. They don't really want to sit in there and kind of hear the messages and the voice in your head, and if you've been neglecting it for a long time, I could see why that would be really scary, because it is going to come at you like you're releasing the floodgates. But the whole point of delving into that subconscious is to kind of think about a forest. Because our Jasmine is rustling around here. By the way, we're down in Texas, Surfside Beach, Texas, and I understand in Chicago it actually snowed yesterday, so it's kind of nice down here at 80 degrees and sunny.
So let's do another little experiment and then we can talk about it. So close your eyes again. Focus on your breath. With your next exhalation, exhale completely, allowing your inhalation to be a reflex. And then just let your breath go wherever it wants to go. And I want you to think about, imagine, or see a blue sky with clouds in it. And just allow the clouds to form into one word. A word that you intuitively understand why you're seeing that right now, or thinking about it, or feeling it. And when you have your word, open your eyes. I've been guiding people in meditation to find a word for 20 years. And the only words I ever hear are peace, love, joy, happiness, something like that. What was your word?
Flow.
Flow.
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking about this idea of meditation being scary, but really what we find is a gentleness inside, because we're connecting to source and all that there is. And there are no negative things there. There's memories that come up for processing, but they don't make you feel worse when you process them. They make you feel better. You might feel some pain while you're processing them.
But the result is always a sense of peace and, letting go.
Yep. And so that's the point, especially if you have a lot of anxiety in your life, or your hormones are not very balanced, or you're going through something painful. In the moment of meditation, you'll probably struggle a little bit because your mind will wander more, or you'll be more aware of the pain. But what happens 20 minutes later, an hour later, all of a sudden you do feel that peacefulness, or you sleep better that night, or the pain relaxes somewhat. And there's a great video on YouTube by Gregg Braden, Gregg Braden, called The Power of Visualization. And in there, he talks about this one experiment that they did with DNA. And what they did is they measured people's DNA as they were emoting. And so they found that if people had emotions like anger, fear, resentment, guilt, shame, their DNA would constrict. It would like bunch up, right? And then when they meditated on emotions like peace and love and happiness, it would expand and come into a healthier place. And so that's another part of meditation that is so important, is that when we meditate, we allow our physical body to start to relax and to open up again, which allows a lot more natural healing to occur. And you can try that right now. Just, if you notice, your mind will sort of just always think about stuff that's a problem, because our brains are designed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They're designed to seek negativity so much faster than positivity.
And the reason why is for survival. If we
Mhm.
can foresee a problem happening, then we can plan for it, we could prepare and maybe alleviate or avoid it. So when your mind is scanning in its environment, it's scanning for any potential threats. And that's just what it's designed to do. So it is work, to kind of turn off that natural tendency and really, let go and be in that moment.
And the female brain does that even more than the male brain, because we are potentially in more danger, right? So if a guy is walking towards you as you're walking down the street and you're a female, you're probably going to cross the street or get on your cell phone or go the other way. You're going to do something before you find out if that person is dangerous for you or not. Where a guy will probably just keep walking because he's got at least a shot. So women are much more
Hypervigilant.
Wow, that's a big word. I was going to say like we think about those things a lot more because our survival depends on it. And so that's why typically when there's an issue in a relationship, it's the woman who notices it first.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
before it's even a problem.
Right.
Like she'll contemplate that there's a potential problem. And so that makes it a little bit worse for us in terms of turning that part of our brain down. And if you think about taking a toy away from a child, they're probably going to have a little bit of a tantrum. And so is your brain if you try to not think negative. I always like to think of the analogy of, you put in a Google search red shoes. What comes up?
Red shoes.
And if you put in the Google search, I don't want red shoes, what comes up?
Red shoes.
Right. Our brain's the same way. If someone tells you don't eat chocolate cake, the first thing you're going to want to do is eat chocolate cake. Don't think about penguins. You're thinking about penguins.
Right. It's going to tune into what you focus on, what your attention goes to. And, in talking about men and women, there is actually a biological difference, in our brain, between the genders. Men, we use one hemisphere of the brain at a time. And women can actually use both hemispheres simultaneously, and, the reason why is back in the hunter-gatherer, stages of our civilization, men would go out and hunt and their brain would have to focus on just the hunt alone. Right. And so it's very task oriented, solution focused, versus, women at the time, they were gatherers and, they had to kind of take care of the kids and take care of gathering and the community as well.
Yeah.
And so there's multiple tasks that are happening simultaneously that they needed to be able to focus on. So when we're talking about meditation and having to focus on things, it can be very challenging at times, just given the differences in our brain structure.
This is why I hear a lot with the women I work with that they find TV to be more of a stressor than a relaxer, and men say it's more of a relaxer, because if they're focused on the TV, they don't hear anything else going on in the room. But if the TV's on, she's focused on that, or where her kids are, or if there's something cooking, or it's like, oh, one more thing to think about. So the easier thing than to take away negative thoughts is to introduce something else to focus on. And this is why you hear a lot of things about making a gratitude list, right? And so if you just spend some time as you're falling asleep at night, thinking about all the things you're grateful for. And, you know, you don't have to think of big things. You could be grateful for having a roof over your head or food in your stomach or your bills are paid or, you know, stay small. But when you do that, what you're doing is you're stopping the stress chemicals from traveling through your body and you're introducing the good hormonal chemicals, you know, the oxytocin and the endorphins, and it'll help you sleep better. And it's our thoughts are creating the chemistry in our bodies, and then we feel all that tension. And so instead of trying to make your brain stop thinking, which it won't, let it think about things that actually make it feel better.
Keep in mind that this isn't something that happens overnight either. I mean, there are times that you will come out of meditation and you're going to feel really good, right? And so you're going to feel that immediate response, you know, immediate positive result. But a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. And it's something that builds over time, right? And so the more you practice at it, you know, the stronger your meditation muscles get and the more you're able to feel those rewards, right? And then also have it permeate throughout your body physically, right? It's not like a pill where you just take a pill and instantly you're going to get those results.
If you've ever worked out, like really did a good workout program for a long period of time, like several months, and your muscles get really strong, and then you stop working out. When you go back to working out, your muscles have memory and they're going to come back much quicker than they did the first time. And that's the same thing that happens in our brain with the process of meditation. And so practicing it, and the more often you do that, the stronger that muscle becomes of finding the pathway in your brain that you can tap more easily into the place that we call vertical time or kairos, right?
So the Greeks have two words for time: chronos, which we're familiar with, which is the clock, and then there's kairos, which is that space and time where, you know, time doesn't seem to exist. You know, maybe you're out on a sunny day and, you know, the wind is blowing and you're just lost in that moment and it seems like time is just flying by. You know, that's what they call kairos.
Or a hobby, or
Sure.
talking in a really great conversation with friends, and you look up and you're like, ooh, it's 2 a.m. That happens to us. That's kairos, when you're in that space where the past and the future fall away and you're in the space we call vertical time. And so what naturally happens when you start to meditate is you have two fields that your brain can go to. It's going to go to the past. And at first it's going to go to the very recent past. You know, did I change the laundry? Did I pay that bill? Whatever is really fresh. And then you're going to be like, oh, wait, I'm meditating. And you're bringing your awareness back to your breath. And then it's going to jump into the future. Oh, when I'm finished meditating, I got to remember to call this person, or I got to do that. And then, oh yeah, I'm meditating. It's going to bring you back. And then you're going to start going farther back in time. You're going to go way farther in the past. Oh, I can't believe that happened, you know, a few years ago. And why am I still thinking about it? Whatever. And then of course you're going to come back, and then you're going to jump farther into the future. I can't wait till I retire, you know, all that kind of stuff.
I was just going to say that's usually where people get frustrated, because they feel like they have to be in the moment and in the present. And you just, you know, rest assured that your brain is designed to do that. It's designed to jump into the future and then to jump back into the past. Okay. And if you're going to attach something to it, like I'm a failure, I'm not doing this right, you know, then that is where that frustration is going to come from. But if you just acknowledge that that's part of the process, you know, then you can pull yourself back into the present tense and really just observe what is occurring. Your mind jumping to the future. Oh, that's interesting. That's that thought. Your mind jumping to the past. Oh, that's interesting too. Right. And then not attach yourself to that.
And then sometimes you'll get into that place of kairos or vertical time where you're neither in the past or the future. And it's a wonderful place where only positivity and loveliness exists. Right?
Loveliness, yes.
It's just loveliness. But it doesn't always happen. Not for me.
Right.
Sometimes it happens really quick and it's lovely, and other times it isn't. And this is one of the reasons we wanted to do an online community, because when we meditate with other people and meditation doesn't need space and time. So we can do this as a group. And even if you're watching this years later, you're also going to tap into the energy of those that are meditating today with us. And what happens in a group is a thing called entrainment. So entrainment is when there's like two pendulum clocks in a room, they'll start to move together.
They've done studies with cardiac cells
Mhm.
where you have one cardiac cell in a petri dish and another one in another dish. You apply electrical current to each of those cardiac cells and they are going to pulsate, right? And as you move those petri dishes closer together, those cardiac cells start to pulsate in the same beat, right? And that's called entrainment. And we feel entrainment whenever we walk into the room and there's another human being in there. There's some calibration that is occurring, right? We feel that with our pets. Our pets create that, right? We have a lot of studies that show that, if you are petting a dog or petting a cat, it lowers your heart rate, it lowers your respiration, lowers your blood pressure. So that entrainment is a really important concept. When you meditate as a group, the entire group is in training together. And, it's a much more powerful way of meditating. So a lot of the couples that we coach, will have them meditate together. And it is a very powerful union that's created.
One of the things that happens when you're in a bonded relationship is you regulate each other's biorhythms. So if your partner is upset, it doesn't feel good for you either, even if it's not about you. If they feel really good, you feel good too. And your heart rate goes together and your blood pressure and all of those biorhythms. And so it's the same concept in a not as intense way as your partner. And so who's ever the most relaxed and going to the place of Kairos is the one that everyone's going to start to entrain to, because that'll be the strongest energy around us. And that's a big part of why it's great to meditate with all of you and not just by ourselves. And we meditate together, which is, it makes a big difference than if you're trying to sneak off in the house by yourself and meditate. But if that's all you can get in, do it for sure. There's many years when we had, the kids were home or whatever, we wouldn't meditate or couldn't meditate at the same time. So anything that you can do is really great.
I was thinking is maybe we can kind of clear up some of the fallacies about meditation that most people have. Like one is, do you focus on just clearing your mind? I think you mentioned that earlier, right? And another one is, do I meditate lying down? Right? When's the best time to meditate? Whether it be in the morning or whether it be in the evening, right? Should I do it with music or guided meditation, right? Should I do it while driving? No, don't do it while driving. That's not a good choice. But one of that first question about clearing your mind, I think that is a huge fallacy because, as we mentioned earlier, you can't possibly clear your mind. It's impossible to do that. Okay. And so when you try, just like focusing on red shoes, it is going to actually cause more conflict in your brain. You're going to say, don't think of a pink elephant. Boom, you're thinking of a pink elephant right now because that's what your brain is designed to do. So the more you try to clear your mind's going to get even more crowded and cluttered.
I want to talk about, in relationship to that, the concept of blessing something. So to bless something literally means to hold it in the light for greater understanding. That's it. Doesn't mean to forgive it or condone it or agree with it. Just hold it in the light for greater understanding. So as you're meditating, if a thought comes in and you're not happy with that thought, put some white light around it and bless it and release it. Bless it and release it and get in the habit of doing that, because you already do it. If you have something upsetting, at some point you stop thinking about it, even if you've taken zero action on it. Now that might be in 7 weeks or 7 days or 7 hours or 7 minutes. So the goal is, the less you perseverate on something, the better. And so that's one way you can do it, is just consciously like, okay, I'm thinking about this because it's part of my healing. I don't need to have an answer for it. I don't need to figure anything out. I'm just going to bless it and release it. Right.
The question about whether you lay down when you're meditating, no, you don't. A lot of people think that, I meditated, I closed my eyes and then I fell asleep. Well, that sleep is sleep. Meditation is meditation.
I would say when I started meditating, it was in the early 90s. And I had these two humongous speakers, because, speakers were big back then. And I would put one on either side of my head and a pillow in the middle, and I would lay down. And I listened to this 1 hour meditation 3 times a week. And about 10 years later, I was teaching a group and I brought this, it was a cassette tape, Kelly Howell's cassette tape, and I brought it to a group I was teaching and we listened to this meditation. And that was the first time I actually heard it, because every time I was laying down, and the thing is, if you're laying down, you're still benefiting. And there is a way to do that as you're falling asleep at night that's still very, very beneficial. It's just a different way of using meditation. So I never knew what was on it until I was in this group and I was sitting up and I actually was focused on what she was actually saying. So the way that guided meditation works, it's working in your subconscious mind. So if you fall asleep, your subconscious mind is still paying attention, because your subconscious mind never sleeps. That's its job. That's why, you wake up if the phone rings or there's an alarm clock or your baby cries, you're going to wake up because your subconscious mind is paying attention to that. And so what Ray's talking about sitting up, is about keeping your conscious mind active while you're accessing your subconscious mind, because then you're doing a lot more active work instead of passive work when you're meditating.
And this kind of is on your point here too, in regards to whether you listen to guided meditation, listen to just music, whether you meditate in the morning or whether you meditate at night. That's really just a personal preference, right? There are thousands of different types of meditation practices and techniques. Some of them are guided and transcendental, taking you to another place, being on a beach or in a forest, to Vipassana type of meditation, which is really tuning inward and just observing what is occurring within your body, right? And that's not guided, all right? It's self-guided. So that is, you need to find what works for you. And I prefer meditating in the morning, just because you're starting off your day just in a great place. You're starting your day off, without just hitting the ground running. I hate that feeling when I feel like I have to catch up with my day because it's already ahead of me, right? So that starting in the morning for me, it works much better. For some people, meditating at night is better for them. It maybe helps them sleep after they're done with meditation.
Yeah, because while we're meditating, we're releasing melatonin, which is the hormone that makes us paralyzed when we sleep, so we don't run in our dreams, like our body's not actually moving while we're sleeping. And it does the same thing, and melatonin converts into serotonin if we don't use it up. Meditating in the morning tends to be a little easier because our emotional body doesn't really wake up until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's why people fight more at night, or all sorts of more emotional things happen, more crimes are at night, things like that. But anytime you're going to meditate, if you think about a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 is your most highest level of stress and 1 is no stress, even if you're at an 8, which is hard to meditate when you're there, it's better to go for a short burst of energy when you're that upset about something than to try to meditate. But even if you can meditate, you'll dial back maybe to a 6, which is still more beneficial. Do you have a way to keep 1 minute?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do this for 1 minute. We want you to count your breaths, just the in breath. Don't count the in and the out. And we'll tell you when to start and we'll tell you when to stop. And you can do this with your eyes open or closed, either one, but just count your breaths for 1 minute. Ready?
Yep.
Go.
Yep. Okay.
So just whatever your number is, just sort of hold it. Our bodies have a natural biofeedback system inside of them. And there's a bundle of nerves that are in our brainstem, in our lungs, in our heart, and in our gut. And it's this vagus nerve that is the thing that responds really quickly and without thinking to, if you're driving your car and you need to react, your foot's going to find the brake long before your brain's really thinking about it. And so by counting your breaths, it can give you an indication of that place of, on your scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? You may not be aware of it, but your body is going to respond to that. So our heart likes between 4 and 7 breaths per minute. So if you're between 4 and 7 breaths per minute, your body is in the sympathetic nervous system. It's relaxed. It's working very efficiently. It's digesting food and repairing cells and doing all the things that our body needs to do. The average American breathes 12 times per minute. And if you're over 16, that's anxiety. And so it's kind of an interesting way to gauge where you're at. And so this biofeedback system is the thing that's telling your brain how much stress chemicals to dump out or how many, positive chemicals to dump out.
Yeah, we often hear numbers like 16, 18, 25, because
people are panting.
Yeah. Our society does not promote, being in sync, like our heart and respiration. So we're all very stressed, pretty much.
And if you find that meditating is making you more anxious, it's a really good idea to try to do some yoga before you meditate. That's actually what yoga was designed for, is to prepare your body for meditation. So sometimes people need more activity around meditating, but that anxiety is part of what's coming up for healing, because when we're having emotions, we're able to slow them down. We're able to actually stop them or freeze them. But emotions are energy, and the nature of energy is it has to move. So as that energy is coming in, if it's not being processed, it does this. So if you've ever felt anxiety, that's what it feels like. Right here, it just really gets you. And so it's got to go somewhere. And what happens, especially when you're doing very active meditating, is you are trying to take that energy that's stuck, that emotion that's stuck, and try to get it to flow again. And any emotion, whether negative or positive, if it's allowed to flow, will find balance. And so
And
that's why meditation can be not always pleasant, but the effects are beneficial after that.
I would say it's even necessary. Consider that our subconscious mind has to process on a daily basis. When we go into REM, when we're sleeping, we dream. Dreaming is necessary for our brain. It's necessary for the subconscious mind to process what we've been going through, the thoughts, the feelings, situations, circumstances in our life. If we don't go into REM, it's actually a very severe condition where psychosis can develop, right? Extreme fatigue. And so that is our subconscious mind's process, to clear out everything that we have been experiencing. Meditation is our conscious way of accessing subconscious mind. It's a conscious way of actually exercising that muscle and being able to process at a conscious level. So it is absolutely necessary for our health, not just mentally, but physically as well.
So there's a lot of different breathing techniques. So if you are breathing more than 12 times in a minute, you can practice doing a technique where you breathe in for a count of 3 or a count of 4. But I find that Huna breath is a count of 4, but people who are panting or breathing very shallowly, if they try to do 4, they get kind of dizzy. They're not used to that much oxygen in their brain. So breathe in for a count of 3, hold your breath for a count of 3, and then exhale for a count of 6. Like, you don't need to time this. It's not about seconds. It's just about doubling your exhalation, because then you're fully exhalating. And when you fully exhalate, then you will naturally fully inhalate. And so even if you have 1 minute, maybe you're at a family gathering that's stressful, and, and you go to the bathroom, you can do this in the bathroom for 1 minute. Just breathe in for a count of 3, hold your breath for a count of 3, exhale for a count of 6, right? And if you do 4 or 5 breaths like that, that's going to get you through that minute, and that'll lower the stress and start to produce some good chemicals. It's an interesting concept that it takes about 20 minutes for us to, like, if you took a pill, a medication, it would take 20 minutes for that to get into every cell in your body. Well, the same thing is true if you breathe like that. It's going to take another 20 minutes for all that stress chemicals to be released from your body. So you won't feel the benefit necessarily immediately, but you will feel it very shortly after that.
I think that brings up a good question, is how long should you meditate for? Right? Some people, they can't stand it for more than a minute. But yeah, 20 minutes, it takes 20 minutes for you to really get into that groove, you really want to think about meditating for at least that amount of time. If you are in a rush, 30 minutes of meditation just to start your morning off is really a great way to start the day, right? If you can do an hour meditation, even better. Who is that speaker that does
Joe
2 hours?
Dispenza.
Joe Dispenza does 2 hours of meditation a day, right? And there's some huge benefit in it. What was I going to say? Oh, just kind of a quick shout out here. If you struggle with anxiety and your breaths were over 12, definitely get in contact with Angie. Angie is an anxiety coach, and she kind of works with people specifically on that issue and stress as well.
Yeah, and it's really great that part of your talk tonight is about anxiety and how meditation can help, because in our poll when we started today, the most popular answer for what someone's looking for in meditation was to decrease their anxiety.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. It's like synergy that we started talking about that topic.
Anxiety is a pretty tricky thing, and it has such a connection to all the parts of our brain. It has a connection to the prefrontal cortex, which is where we're consciously thinking, and we are finding that there's problems and we're trying to find solutions, that part of our brain. And then it has a connection to our emotional brain, which makes us feel bad about ourselves or disconnected from other people. And then it has a connection to our reptilian brain, our hindbrain. And that's the part of us that feels unsafe in the world. And when the way our bodies are designed is, if there's a physical threat, it's going to dump in the adrenaline and the cortisol so you can run away and save your life. And then it goes, okay, the threat is over. I can go back to breathing and digesting food and repairing cells and go back to normal. But anxiety, because it's you're not in physical danger. If you were in physical danger, you wouldn't have anxiety. If you were in physical danger, you would just be getting out of danger. You would be so active, you wouldn't actually, it would be afterwards that you would have anxiety about it. So anxiety, there's not a real threat to your physical life. But because of that, you never realize when you're out of danger, since you're not in physical danger. And so there's not that natural thing that tells it to shut off.
I always say that anxiety does not have a dimmer switch. It has an on and off button, and it serves a function, right? It's a very important emotion that we have. It helped our species survive in the wintertime. If we didn't have anxiety and worry, we wouldn't have that forethought. What if I don't have wood? What if I don't have food and water? When the winter comes, we wouldn't be able to prepare for that, and our species would have died out a long time ago. So we have worry and anxiety in a way to help us survive and deal with potential threats. Now, with that said, it doesn't turn off. It's constantly searching and scanning the environment for those potential threats, and it is going to look at one thing and another, and it's going to extrapolate and try to find more threats so that you could prepare for it. So if you don't actively turn it off, it will just run on its own. And what Jean's talking about is about those hormones that are dumped in our body. Initially, when we have a potential threat in the immediate, we have adrenaline that is pumped in through our brain, right, into our body. It helps us get away from the threat or deal with the threat, right? And so it sends all that, that energy to our extremities so that we can fight, we can run, or we can hide. Okay. Now, if that threat is still there, over a couple hours or over a day period or over a month, adrenaline is very short-lived. So it empties, it gets, is removed from our body very quickly. So our body has to produce another type of hormone so that it can stay throughout the entire threat. And that's cortisol. And that's produced by our adrenal glands. And that hormone is a really powerful one. It's very damaging too. It has some really bad side effects. The purpose of that hormone is to shunt all of our energy to the vital parts of our body to get away from the threat. So it shuts down everything that's non-essential. Reproduction, digestion, that's why people with high stress levels, they have a lot of digestion issues, right? They have high blood pressure, right? They have cardiac issues, headaches, right? All of those are a result of ongoing stress and the exposure to cortisol over a long period of time. So if we're not actively turning off that anxiety response, if we're not actively processing, helping our body process all of those hormones, that cortisol, to get it out of our body, we are going to feel, the effects of that hormone being in us for a long period of time.
And this is why having someone like Angie work with you, you need to work at all those different levels. And so meditation is one tool that is going to help you, hopefully, in that hindbrain part of you, which is unconscious, which is the automatic stuff, which is where, you wake up in the morning and your heart's already pounding, and it's starting before you're even having conscious thought. And so because it's you experiencing it and you're emotionally connected to it, you don't have good perspective. And so you need an outside person to coach you through, like, how to do some self-talk or think about this or what it's connected to. So meditation is a wonderful tool, but if you only use meditation and you don't do the rest of the work, probably not going to feel too much better unless you can meditate for 1 to 2 hours a day and really retrain your brain, which is the point of meditating, is to rewire whatever got wired together, which is the reason you're waking up with anxiety. And Angie and I will be teaching a group on this coming up, which we haven't totally formulated it yet, but I've been doing a lot of work on how do we get this hindbrain to realize that it's safe and it doesn't have to be in this place all the time. And so this is related to anything anxiety, any type of traumas we've had, any type of pain we've been through.
Mm-hmm.
If we've gone through the pain of someone cheating on us, or a loss of some, all sorts of loss, anything that's really painful, that gets stuck in us because our brain's trying to get safe again. And it's in our hindbrain and it doesn't know that. And that's why meditating, and especially hypnosis, the difference of hypnosis and meditation, it's the same process. The difference is the post-hypnotic suggestions. So that's the part that you're being specifically given these really specific messages to that part of your brain that helps you rewire and change that. And we'll let you know when that's coming up, that group.
That rewiring process, I don't think people know that it's usually like a 6 to 8 week process of that rewiring. When the neurons in our brain are reaching out for each other and making those connections and strengthening those connections, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for that to happen. And we know that because of, SSRIs, antidepressants, anxiolytics, those medications, doctors tell you it takes 6 to 8 weeks to actually get to an optimal dosage or optimal level. And that's just because that is the time period it takes for those neurons, to reach out and make those connections and strengthen those connections. Right. So, in the rebuilding process of all the neurons, and I don't want to get into microbiology right now, but, that's something to really keep in mind, is that when you are trying to rewire your brain, from a meditation perspective, a mental and intellectual perspective, it is going to take time and consistent practice at it for you to get into that place of rewiring. Okay. Because everyone think about what hand you write with, right? I write with my, right hand. Okay. And so when I'm learning to write as a kid in my parietal lobe, where I have fine motor movement, that's where the neurons are reaching out for each other, making those connections, teaching me how to write with my right hand. But if I try to write with my left hand, those neuron connections are not there, or they're not very strong. And so it feels very, arduous. It's very difficult. And it would take a long time, 6 to 8 weeks, of practicing with my left hand in order for me to be able to write as fluid as my right hand. But that's because those neurons need to make connections.
Yeah, we saw that one video documentary with that woman. She was born without arms, and she was flying and playing with her feet.
Yeah.
So she was able to make those connections with her feet. So it's very possible our brains are very fluid.
She's actually the first female pilot without hands.
Yep. And we're going to meditate now. Is there any questions or anything else we need to cover before we jump into this?
No, I think it's perfect time.
Awesome. Okay. So sitting up, get into a comfortable position, and you want your spine to be straight. So you want to imagine like there's a line coming out of the top of your head and you're like perfectly hanging from it. And you can be sitting in a chair. If you're sitting on the floor, you can cross your legs so that you feel really, grounded and you have a solid base. And then when you're ready, just sort of gently close your eyes. And I want you to imagine a circle about 24 inches above your head, like the size of a hula hoop, that can really fit around your whole body. And imagine that this hula hoop is made of energy. And inside of this hula hoop, it's spinning negatively charged ions. And this is what happens when there's lightning and those ions come and they clear the air, and it feels so good and fresh because our atoms, which make up our cells, have electrons which can be lost or gained or shared. And so wherever you might be out of balance, we're going to use this hula hoop to help you find that balance. So just imagine that it begins to lower and feel it in your energy field. And allow it to stop right when it gets to the top of your head. And you might even feel a little tingling sensation. And allow the hoop to drop down through your head. And feel those ions moving through in between every cell in your body. Bringing balance and healing. Allow it to pass over your shoulders. Down through your chest and your upper back. Over your abdomen and your lower back. Over your hips. Your thighs. Your knees. Your calves. Your ankles. And your feet. And allow the hoop to go 24 inches down below your feet. And when it gets down to the bottom of the 24 inches, allow it to reverse the process and slowly come back up, being very conscious of what you feel as it passes over your feet, your ankles, your calves, your knees, your thighs, up through your hips, your abdomen and lower back, your chest and the upper part of your back, up over your shoulders, up through your neck and your head, and all the way up to 24 inches above your head. And now reverse the process. And I'll be quiet as you go all the way down to 24 inches below your feet, and let it rest when it gets there. Just observe. And when the hoop reaches 24 inches above your feet, below your feet, imagine a column of golden energy flowing straight up through the path that the hoop just landed on. And see your body surrounded in 2 feet in every direction in this column of golden energy. This is your personal space. Any negativity coming from outside this space bounces off the exterior and goes back to the sender as a blessing. Remember, a blessing is to hold them in the light for greater understanding. Any negativity coming from within bounces off the interior and comes back to you as a lesson. And take a moment right now, as you're in the center of this column of golden light. Focus on your heart center. And in your heart, hold 3 situations which are troubling you. Don't seek any logic, reasons, or outcomes. Just hold them in your heart. And imagine a circle of white light surrounding your heart as you bless these situations, holding them in the light for greater understanding. Ask yourself some wonderful questions. What can I learn from these situations I'm going through? Ask for help. Help to carry these situations, and help for guidance to learn what you can do about it. Bless these situations. And now focus your attention on your mind. In your sacred brain, think about 3 things you're grateful for. And feel the chemicals in your brain that are released from focusing on gratitude. And say a short prayer of gratitude for your healing and for this time you took to take care of yourself and understand yourself at a different level. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes.
Feel refreshed.
Yeah. So thank you for spending some time with us today. We hope this is beneficial. If you do have any questions, feel free to send us an email.
Contact at couplesynergy.com. Thank you for all your suggestions on topics and everything. Keep them coming, because we'll be able to address all of those questions and topic suggestions on future weekly webinars.
Have a great week. Keep breathing.
Take care.